Hey friends, I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess that some of you are suffering through some things that are pretty rough right now. It seems like our world is sort of going crazy, and so we're dealing with not only unexpected illness in the face of a pandemic, but we're also dealing with storms and natural disasters, and we're dealing with death, and we're dealing with pain and loss and suffering and a lot of uncertainty. And I know a lot of us are praying for things, and I just wanted to reach out today as an encouragement, because sometimes what we ask for we don't get. Not every prayer we pray is answered the way we want it to be. And I don't want that to be something that comes between us and God. I don't want that to be something that makes us lose our faith because God didn't answer our prayers the way we wanted him to. The reality is that there are prayers that I have prayed and God's answer was no. I asked him to save my marriage and he said no. And maybe you've asked him to save your children, and maybe you've lost one, and maybe you've asked him for help and your health is failing, and we sit here sometimes and we want to doubt that God knows what he's doing because he's not doing what we want. And that's dangerous, because the reality is that God knows more than we know. He knows what's going to happen tomorrow, and he knows what the future holds, and he knows what's best for us in a way that we don't, because we can only see what's happening right now, and that's such a limited viewpoint. If I can make a decision for what's best for me right in this minute, I might not make the decision that's best for me 10 years from now. But God knows what is going to happen in my life, and he knows what's going to happen in your life, and he knows what's necessary for our salvation. In the Bible there's a story of Hezekiah, and he pleaded with God to add to his life. He wanted years. I sometimes wonder why we beg for years on this earth with all the pain and decay and rough things we have to suffer through, but he did, and God answered that prayer. But he lost his soul for that. The 15 years he got were detrimental to his eternity. And nothing is worth that. Nothing is worth our eternity. There are things that I think that I want. I know I want them. But in all things I have learned the hard way. And I need to continue learning that God knows what's best for me. And he promises that his plans are good for me. And although he has told me that life is going to be hard and rough sometimes, he has also promised that he's with me in every single one of those rough minutes. I heard someone say the other day that if prayers work, then this certain thing was going to happen. But I want to assure you, friends, that prayers do work. They work 1,000%. But in God's infinite grace and mercy, he doesn't always answer prayers the way we're asking them, because we have a finite view and he has an infinite view. We have personal wants and desires, and he knows what's best for us in the long run. And because we don't know what's best, sometimes he makes a decision for us, and the reality is we might not ever know on earth why he's made that decision. I know that in my situation I could sit here and wish that there was someone in my life to love me, or that I was in a relationship or something like that. That prayer might not ever be answered. I don't know what God has planned as far as that goes. But I do know that there will come a time I can ask him. I can ask him why this person was taken out of my life. I can ask him why I had to suffer through that pain, and I'll get those answers, and I'll be satisfied with those answers. Do you understand that we'll be satisfied with the way God has led our life? And I also want to point out just real briefly that a lot of what we suffer through isn't because God's trying to punish us in some way, or because he's horrible, or because he's disconnected, or because he doesn't love us. It's not like that at all. We live in a sinful world, and bad things will happen. It's a truth that we have to live with. There will be people who die unexpectedly, and there will be murder and famine, and there will be pain and pestilence, and there will be natural disasters, and there will be financial disasters, and we will have to suffer through some things. And I think sometimes when we're on the borderline of Christianity, we feel like we shouldn't have to suffer through some of those things. But as you walk closer with Christ, as you give him your heart every day, you tend to get to the place where you ask why a little less, and you just trust, because that's what he's asking you to do. He's asking you to trust him. Trust him even when Satan's ruining your life. Trust him even when you're dealing with consequences of choices you've made in the past. Trust him even when his answer is no. There's a Lauren Daigle song that is just beautiful and goes wonderfully with this thought process. I'm going to try to sing it. I've only recently heard it again, but I gotta tell you, several years ago when I was going through a really dark period, I was at a camp meeting, and for one of the special musics, this young girl, maybe 14, 15, she got up on stage with her ukulele, and she sang this song. I could barely hear her, but the words just resonated with me. And I went and looked up the song online, and it was a Lauren Daigle song, and I didn't really know who Lauren Daigle was at the time. But it's a beautiful thought, because she talks about realizing that everything needs to be laid down at Jesus' feet. He won't move every mountain. He won't part all the waters. He won't answer every prayer the way we're asking, but he can still be trusted. And sometimes it's the climbing of that mountain, or the treading those rough waters, or that moment of learning the faith that comes from feeling like our prayers are bouncing off the ceiling wall and like he's not even listening to us. If we can still trust him through that, then our eyes are open to all that he's doing for us, because it's amazing what God is doing on our behalf. And he's doing it on my behalf, even though he hasn't answered every prayer the way I've prayed it. He's doing it on your behalf, even if you're suffering through something difficult right now. He hasn't left you, and he hasn't forsaken you. That's a promise. He says he will never leave you or forsake you. He also promises that he is very near to the brokenhearted. So if right now you are dealing with a broken heart, if you're confused, if you're hurt, if you're tempted to question why God is letting you suffer through something, why isn't he answering your prayers the way you're asking them? Where is he right now? If those are the questions you're asking, the answer is he's with you. He is answering, and you can trust him because he's faithful and trustworthy. And one day you will be able to ask him to his face why it is everything had to happen the way it did. But at the same time, you'll be thanking him for the salvation he's given you amidst all your trials. So I'm going to try to sing this song. Forgive me if it goes horribly, and because I have no music and an interesting range, sometimes I go to a different note. But anyway, we're going to see how it goes. Letting go of every single dream, I lay each one down at your feet. Every moment of my wandering never changes what you see. I've tried to win this war, I confess. My hands are weary, I need your rest. Mighty warrior, king of the fight. No matter what I face, you're by my side. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. Truth is, you know what tomorrow brings. There's not a day ahead you have not seen. So in all things be my life and breath. I want what you want, Lord, and nothing less. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. She goes on to say that you are my strength and comfort. You are my steady hand. You are my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand. Your ways are always higher. Your plans are always good. There's not a place where I'll go you have not already stood. So when you don't move the mountains, I'm asking you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I'm still going to trust because He's trustworthy. I pray you learn to trust Him as you're climbing that very difficult mountain, as you're wading those very difficult waters, as you're crying out and asking for answers. I pray that you learn to trust Him even when His answer is no, even when His answer is wait, even when His answer is, I know what's best for you, even if you can't see it right now. I pray you learn to trust in Him that way, and I'm praying for you. Pray for me too.